The drama surrounding the Indiana Fever reached a boiling point in Atlanta. It wasn't just another playoff game. It was a collision of frustration, exhaustion, and controversy that exposed the cracks in a league already fighting for credibility. The Fever, a team that had spent an entire season clawing its way through injury after injury, walked into Game 1 against the Atlanta Dream, carrying not just the weight of expectation, but the weight of survival. By the time the final buzzer sounded, their head coach, Stephanie White, had seen enough. Her explosion on the sideline, a rare moment where composure gave way to outrage, wasn't just about a single call. It was about everything that had built up to that moment, the missed whistles, the phantom fouls, and a sense that the game had been taken out of their hands. For months, Indiana had been defined by resilience. Their lineup was constantly in flux, patched together by necessity rather than design. The season had already robbed them of stars and stability. Caitlin Clark's groin injury had ended her rookie campaign early, Chloe Bibby's knee gave out, Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson both went down, and Aari McDonald joined the list with a foot injury. Then, less than 24 hours before the opening playoff game, Dyrus Dantas was forced into concussion protocol. That made 6 players unavailable, 6 rotation pieces stripped away before the ball even touched the court. For most teams, that kind of setback would have been the end, but not for the Fever. When they stepped into Gateway Center Arena to face the Dream, they looked like a team held together by tape and grit. And somehow they still found a way to compete. The injured players traveled anyway, filling the front rows in street clothes, cheering from behind the bench because there weren't enough seats for everyone. It was a powerful image, a team so bruised that even the sideline couldn't contain all its wounds. But it also showed something deeper, unity. No one wanted to sit this one out, not even those who could barely walk. From the opening tip, it was clear the Fever weren't here to bow out quietly. Kelsey Mitchell came out blazing, hitting early jumpers that silenced the Atlanta crowd. Aaliyah Boston, the reigning Rookie of the Year, went to work inside, muscling her way through double teams and cleaning the glass with determination. For a moment, it looked like Indiana might just pull off the unthinkable. They led 15-6, forcing the Dream to call an early timeout. Against all logic, against every disadvantage, the Fever were winning. But then the whistles started. One after another, the referees began to assert themselves. Clean defensive stops turned into fouls. Perfectly timed rotations were suddenly deemed illegal contact. Aaliyah Boston, who had been establishing deep position on nearly every play, was hit with questionable calls that defied logic. Even Lexi Hull, one of the team's most disciplined defenders, found herself tagged for a foul despite replays clearly showing she hadn't touched her opponent. Stephanie White burned a challenge early and she won it, a sign that her instincts were right. But that didn't fix the problem. The pattern kept repeating, and by the end of the second quarter, she had used both of her challenges just to keep her players from drowning under the officiating. Every coach expects to deal with mistakes from referees, but this was different. The imbalance was glaring. Atlanta's physical play was being rewarded, while Indiana's efforts were being punished. Brittany Grainer's elbows found space in the post. Ryan Howard drew fouls on phantom contact. Each whistle seemed to tilt the floor just a little more. And as the game wore on, the Fever's early spark began to fade under the constant stop-and-go rhythm the referees had created. It wasn't just bad calls. It was timing. Every time Indiana gained momentum, a whistle cut them off. Every time they made a defensive stand, a foul reset the play. The Fever's bench grew restless, and Stephanie White's patience wore thinner with every possession. You could see it in her face, in the disbelief, the anger, the helplessness that comes from watching something you can't control. When another ticky-tack foul went against Aaliyah Boston late in the third, White finally snapped. She erupted, shouting at the officials with a fury that had been simmering for weeks. The ref wasted no time giving her a technical foul. The crowd roared, half in shock, half in agreement. Everyone watching knew what she was saying, and more importantly, why she was saying it. This wasn't just about one game. It was about a season of climbing uphill only to see the slope get steeper every time they got close. White's outburst was the voice of a team and a fan base that had had enough. Even Caitlin Clark, still recovering and watching from the sidelines, tried to calm her coach down. The sight of Clark, the face of the franchise, stepping in to hold her own coach back, said everything about how chaotic that night had become. It was like the Fever were fighting two opponents at once, the Atlanta Dream and the officiating crew. Atlanta seized the moment. With the Fever reeling and the game slowed to a crawl, the Dream took control. Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard started to find their rhythm. Naz Hillman came off the bench and provided instant energy, scoring inside and drawing fouls that continued to frustrate Indiana. By the fourth quarter, the Dream had flipped the game completely. The Fever were chasing a scoreboard that didn't feel earned. The final numbers didn't tell the story. The box score said Atlanta won, but anyone who watched knew the officiating had taken center stage. Still, through all of it, the Fever refused to quit. Kelsey Mitchell's performance became the lone bright spot in a night that felt cursed. She finished with 27 points, a playoff career high, hitting nearly half her shots and doing everything she could to drag her team along. Every time the Fever's offense stagnated, she willed it back to life. She wasn't just scoring, she was leading, controlling tempo, finding teammates, trying to turn frustration into fight. Aaliyah Boston was battered all game, but she never backed down. She pulled in 12 rebounds, fought through double teams, and kept her composure despite the officiating nightmare. Lexi Hull chipped in 9 points, hit one of the team's rare threes, and gave the Fever the kind of hustle plays that keep teams afloat. Those numbers might not make headlines, but they told a story of heart, of players who refused to fold, even when the game seemed stacked against them. Atlanta, on the other hand, looked every bit like the healthier, deeper team. Ryan Howard poured in 20, Alicia Gray matched her, and Griner's presence forced the Fever to collapse inside on nearly every possession. The Dream's rotation stayed fresh, while Indiana's starters gasped for air by the fourth. That difference in depth, more than anything, became the deciding factor once the whistles started swinging momentum. When the final horn sounded, Stephanie White didn't bother hiding her emotions. She looked furious, deflated, and exhausted all at once. She had spent 2 hours watching her players battle through adversity, only to see it undone by inconsistency. And for a team that had fought tooth and nail just to make the playoffs, that kind of loss cuts deeper than most. But the story doesn't end in Atlanta, because now everything shifts to Indianapolis. Game 2 isn't just another opportunity, it's history. The Fever haven't hosted a home playoff game since 2016. Nearly a decade of waiting, rebuilding, and believing has led to this moment. Gainbridge Fieldhouse will finally feel the weight of postseason basketball again, and the fans know what's at stake. This isn't just about evening a series. It's about pride, redemption, and proving that Indiana basketball, no matter how beaten or bruised, still stands for something. Yet the challenge remains enormous. The Fever are still down 6 key players. Caitlin Clark's groin injury hasn't healed enough for her to suit up. Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson remain out. Dantas is still under concussion protocol. The bench is thin, the margin for error microscopic, and the opposing team fully healthy. Atlanta knows the formula: swarm Boston, pressure Mitchell, and dare the Fever's role players to make shots. If Indiana can't hit from outside, the Dream will pack the paint again, forcing contested looks that rarely end well. Stephanie White knows it. She's seen it before. Her message heading into Game 2 is simple. The Fever have to move the ball faster, trust their instincts, and play with the edge that carried them this far. No wasted possessions, no letting the referees dictate tempo. They can't control the whistle, but they can control how they respond to it. And there's something else the Fever have now that they didn't in Atlanta: home court. For the first time in nearly 10 years, Gainbridge Fieldhouse will roar for playoff basketball. The fans who stuck with this team through every losing season, every injury report, every heartbreak, they're finally getting their moment. And if there's one thing Indiana knows, it's how to rally behind a team with its back against the wall. The Fever have been here before, in spirit, if not in record. A franchise built on toughness and legacy doesn't vanish just because of a few bad calls. And for Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and the rest of this depleted roster, this isn't about sympathy anymore. It's about sending a message. When Mitchell spoke to the media before Game 2, she didn't complain about officiating. She didn't even bring up the injuries. Instead, she said something simple but powerful. If we can put together 40 minutes, we can beat anybody. That's the mentality that defines underdogs, the refusal to be written off.